Hello, everybody. My name is Adam, and I'm on a mission to become the world's most prolific reviewer. And to do that, I review books and podcasts and movies and TV series. Today, I'm continuing on with a series called 12 from Hell. And the book that I'm reviewing is called Vampire Killer: A Terrifying True Story of Psychosis, Mutilation, and Murder by Ryan Green. And like with a lot of Ryan Green books, his way of writing a true crime book is a little bit different than other people's. So, other authors, I guess authors are people too. Um, so he'll actually kind of give you the interior thoughts and write it from the killer's point of view. And I think, honestly, this book was the most disturbing of all of the books that I have read so far because the of his because obviously these are crimes that this man did, and the the person in the that the book is about is called Richard Chase. So Richard Chase did commit a lot of crimes, violent crimes, really gross, morally abhorrent crimes, and he did horrible things with the bodies of the people he killed. But I think it's pretty clear from Richard's biography that he was unwell since he was a child, and like mentally unwell since he was a child, and a lot of this was hereditary in his family. Like, he grew up with a mother who said that his dad was poisoning them, and later he also believed that he was being poisoned by Nazi UFOs or his mother or his dad or whatever. And he was institutionalized many times throughout his life. And there were moments where he did these things that were not rational, but he kind of escaped the consequences each time. So, one, his mother also was not mentally very stable, so she did her best to try and raise him along with his dad, but it wasn't very good. Like, for example, much later, he would be institutionalized because I think he murdered a dog or something, or a cow. Yeah, I think he murdered a cow because that that's kind of crazy. But basically, he believed that there was this conspiracy against him, a Nazi UFO conspiracy, and that if he killed things, the blood would purify him and give him energy. So he started with like rabbits, and he moved on to cats and dogs and cows and eventually people. So after he killed the cow, he was placed in an institution, and they gave him medicine, and he was doing better. And his mother was appointed as his guardian, and his mother got him out of the institution and said, "Oh, you shouldn't take drugs anymore," because he had been taking drugs earlier, but those were not uh, you know, uh, psychiatric drugs. Those were like pod and LSD and all of that stuff. They weren't drugs to help with a person's mind. So his mother was like completely anti drugs, and that was the thing that eventually led him to spiral into like these conspiracies in his own mind and start murdering dogs and then murdering people. And yeah, so the things that don't make a lot of sense about this case are that, as I said, he was given a lot of opportunities to kind of slip out of the side of the system. And he wasn't some kind of criminal mastermind or anything. He just kept doing the same thing because that's where his psychosis and his obsession led him to. Like, he was at a party and he threatened some people with a gun, and it was kind of like a joke. But the police, when they came to get him, they didn't take the gun. They just left it with the people who had been at this party, and they didn't want to get him in any more trouble than he was. So they kept the gun, and then he went back and he got the gun, and then much later, a few years later, he would actually shoot the gun at a human, um, and he would miss, and there'd be a bullet in a door frame. So, and the police didn't do any forensic work on that because it was just like some weird random coincidence, right? But he was escalating all of these behaviors. And so what I mean is if they had like tracked that gun, they would have been able to connect it to Richard much earlier, and then he would have been arrested. Um, so yeah, that's a weird part about this, that it doesn't make a lot of sense as to why they didn't do anything about it him earlier. And the other part, which is kind of strange, is so he committed like so he was escalating and eventually escalated to the point of cannibalism. But he was doing it because he believed that there was this conspiracy, this UFO Nazi conspiracy against him. And no one around him thought that he was sane. Like, everyone could tell that this was not a person who was functioning at a stable level. But he was tried, and he was found guilty of his crimes because they thought, like, oh well, he had the wherewithal to kill these people, which I don't like. I don't know. It's hard to be sympathetic to him because there was nothing about him that was, in retrospect, good. Like, he was popular when he was a kid, and that's the only thing that you can say that was good about him. So, on the one hand, you can say it's not a loss that he died, because eventually he commits suicide in prison, because he did cause all of this suffering to people. But on the other hand, if his condition had been taken seriously by his mother and his father, like, his father seemed to be the more rational of the parent, but he thought that, you know, his son didn't have any mental issues. It was just a weakness of character. So obviously that was wrong. And his mother wasn't a person who could actually decide about that because she also had mental issues. So if somebody had just stepped up and said, Richard, you have this problem, and we're going to try and help you with the problem, but it's going to be a very long um, it's going to be a very long process, then it would be a different kind of situation. And to be a bit personal here, the reason why I feel that way is because my father was diagnosed with schizophrenia when I was a boy, and there was a situation involving my mother and him, and I had a father throughout my life, and you could say it could have been better, but it could have been a lot worse, right? Like, if nobody had taken those signs seriously, like, what would have the outcome been? It probably, I don't think it would have gone as extreme as Richard's case, because the fact is, and this was actually used by the prosecution in his case, is that most schizophrenics are not actually violent to other people. They're more violent to themselves, and they're actually in more danger from the outside world than they are to others because they don't understand what's going on. They can't distinguish between reality and stuff. So I think that Richard would have had a chance to live, maybe not a normal life, maybe not a happy life, but a life where he didn't do the horrible things that he did if somebody had just given him the help that he needed from a very early age. So I think it's a tragedy for Richard, but of course, it's a tragedy of all of those things that, all of those people who were affected by Richard as well. So all of that could have been prevented. So there were babies who didn't grow up. There were people who didn't have parents because of Richard, you know. And not that's the thing. That's the thing that makes me a little bit angry with this situation is it's not just because of Richard. Because Richard was in the throes of his delusion, of his psychosis. And maybe it wasn't schizophrenia, maybe there was some other mental thing going on with him, but he clearly was not sane. So he should have been protected, and people should have been protected from him. So it's not like a case like BTK, Dennis Radler, who kind of made rational decisions to kill people. So you can say he was the person responsible. And Dennis Radler was able to maintain a normal life, like a normal facade, for years. For 25 years. He raised children. Richard Chase wouldn't have been able to do that because he didn't have the control over anything in his life to be able to do that. He couldn't hold a job. Like, he had this job where he was a bus driver, and all his boss, as was his uncle, asked him to do was to go to the garage, drive the bus to the garage, and the people in the garage would change the oil. And Richard wasn't able to do that. So, I mean, it's hard because you don't want to excuse evil, right? You don't want to say, yeah, it's okay that he killed those people because it's not okay that he killed those people, but it's also not 100% his responsibility that those people died. But what do you think? Because I think I have maybe a bit too personal point of view about this, but what do you think? Put your thoughts in the comment section. Like and subscribe. Uh, my next goal is 100 subscribers, so I'm at 81. So please subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you very much. Bye bye.